Thank you so much for joining us today at Empoweress with this lovely lady, Ayushi Gudwani, who I'll be in a fireside conversation with. So my name is Nina Claire. I am a mental health advocate, a well-being crusader, and in my previous avatar, I was a well-being lead at Business World. So I set up that platform from scratch. And for those of you who don't know much about Empoweress, it is a platform for women entrepreneurs where they can avail mentoring, funding, and networking opportunities. It's a peer-to-peer learning ecosystem and a place to learn, unlearn, innovate, and grow. Please do visit empoweress.in for more details. So today we have the fabulous Ayushi Gudwani with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nina, for having me.
So Ayushi Gudwani is the founder and CEO of FableStreet. She's an engineer. I'm completely fascinated, first of all, okay, like all these accolades. So she's an engineer. She's an MBA from IIM Calcutta. She worked at McKinsey for 7 years.
Yes, about 6.5 years.
Yes. And then she took this plunge into Solopreneurship in 2016. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Lovely. So I am not going to try and butcher your introduction. I want to do full justice to you. So if you could talk a little bit about FableStreet, that'll be wonderful.
Thank you, Nina. First of all, as I said, thanks for having me. And I'm actually quite excited about the platform. When Amira also reached out, I found this platform quite engaging. And like all of you or most of the people who are watching this, I've had a very similar journey of entrepreneurship. You already introduced my background. I left McKinsey in 2015 to set up FableStreet. The idea behind FableStreet was to build a very strong business which is oriented towards professional women. Me being a professional woman, I understood the customer needs and everything around it. And also, I wanted to stay in the space of contributing towards women. So I wanted to build a commercial venture, understand a need which I personally went through, which is not having great quality workwear for women like me and you across, and also then marry a very strong business objective. I was very clear that if the opportunity is not about $1 billion business, then I don't want to put my head around it. So that three of these things married, and I decided to venture into FableStreet. So FableStreet is actually a premium women's workwear brand. It caters to professional women across all ages and all sizes, and focuses on this concept of tailored fits, which we deliver using tech. So we get 3 body measurements online, and you can get a great fit delivered to your doorstep. So that's what we do at FableStreet, and it addresses all needs of professional women. So we have dresses with pockets, trousers with pockets which fit you well, which are comfortable, you can run and do yoga in. So just coming completely from a need-based approach to solve for women.
That's fabulous. In fact, I think I need to buy stuff because when I was going through my suitcase right now, as you know, I'm in the hills. I wasn't prepared for this. I was like, just let me take up whatever I have. And I was like, I usually have to help me now.
Yes, we are there for you. Very happy to.
Thank you. So I'm absolutely fascinated, as I mentioned to you, right? This whole MBA, engineering. And in my head, the way I've grown up, you have to be qualified for something to do it. So you got into fashion.
Like, oh God, trust me.
What convinced you? Because there's something, obviously, because you're doing well, right? I mean, what was it? What convinced you that you had it to get into fashion?
So, first of all, this is less of fashion and more of the business opportunity. And it married a need that I felt as a consumer. So, right, people say, right, good businesses are built when you can personally empathize about a cause or are passionate about a cause. I still remember back in 2006 in IIM Calcutta days, when I had to appear for my first interview, I could not find even a single brand which could give me a women's suit. And I had to wear a formal suit for my interview, and I could not find even a single brand. I looked around all the markets. Instead of sitting and preparing for my interviews, I was busy trying to create a wardrobe which I could wear for my interviews. And there was only one brand which had 2 options. And I could not fit into that option. Like literally that need exists perennially forever for me. And then eventually it exists for all women. So it is less of a decision to enter into an industry of fashion. It is more of a decision that there is a potential to build the business, and I as a consumer fully understand the need. because of which, I wanted to marry the pain points I had and then solve for it, and that forced me to enter into fashion. And it's a difficult industry, let me tell you that. I had to learn my way through it. But yes, that's how it happened, and now I understand fashion, by the way, in and out.
Lovely.
But and it wasn't the case 5 years ago.
So you've learned along the way. How fabulous. So, you had this idea and you went ahead with it, right?
Yes.
I want to know what was the most challenging part of your journey of taking your venture from idea to reality. I'm sure there were lots, but a few
Yes.
highlights. What were the most challenging parts of this?
I think two to three things that were very, very challenging. Number one was actually putting your idea into execution, and it feels very easy. And I was, by the way, also, I'm coming from a consulting background. So it's great for me to think, come up with a business plan, etc., and hand it over, right? But actually executing it, like, so my first, for me, actually the strongest difficult challenge, but the most memorable moment is when we made our first shirt physically, and I still have it somewhere with me. Whether it was fit or not fit, but just getting a garment which works for you, which you love, and which you want to launch with. So just executing it from concept to actually having the first physical piece was actually the biggest challenge, because I didn't know the industry. It was a new industry. I had to find the how to execute it, where to source fabrics from, um, where to get it manufactured. Literally every part of the journey I had to go through, and I had to get it done in a very short time. So I think that is the biggest challenge. It's just about converting your idea to execution. We can make big plans, but end of the day, the product has to say for it. I would say that was the biggest challenge in the early years of journey. Now the challenges have changed, of course, over the
Yeah.
course of the journey.
I think beyond the journey, it's the situation that we're in the last 1 year. So your domain is non-essential commodities, which is again very fascinating because the pandemic has been very tough for
Yes.
businesses, especially for SMEs, right? So
Yes.
how did you overcome it, especially coming from the non-essential commodities space?
So one of the I have to first of all give my team the full credit for doing so, and we have a fantastic team. We are a non-essential commodity. We are workwear, and within a non-essential commodity, we are the least relevant commodity. We are a workwear brand, and back in March, basically work from home was declared for almost all the organizations. So suddenly you went from wearing trousers and shirts or dresses to wearing tees and lounge wear at home, etc. Right? So it was a very difficult time for us. We pretty much went into zero revenues back in March, and then we had to come out of it. How did we tackle it was a bunch of things. Initially, for the first few months, it was just about sustenance, right? It is about ensuring that the business comes back. So the day we realized we could open up our manufacturing to make masks, we pretty much, like, we were the first set of people up and running to make masks in the entire NCR region, because we needed to just sustain. I remember I was back in office on 22nd or 23rd of April, the next day after Mr. Modi announced it, with just three of my team members and some set of manufacturing member, and rest of the team still working from home. So it was initially really striving to sustain. We started making masks, and then we eventually converted masks into now a fashion statement, but back then it was sustenance. And then eventually we gradually went back and really started understanding what is the new need for the customer. So
Mhm.
we therefore reoriented our product portfolio to make it very relevant to the consumer. We were again first to launch the work from home collection, and people were initially laughing about it. What is this work from home collection, and what exactly is it? But end of the day, eventually that's what people have been buying through for the last 6 months, and it was just made more relevant. People needed to understand what you want to wear. You had no setup for office at home, so you need a collection, or you need a bit of pieces where you can work and look a little bit formal, look Zoom call ready on top, like you and I are, and have comfortable bottoms. You want to sit on the sofa and lounge and work. So getting the apparel which would meet that wasn't easy. No one had that set up at home, so we went through that. So it's purely the agility of the team,
Mhm.
fast thinking,
Mm-hmm.
And then the drive to execute it in a very quick manner and the drive to sustain as a brand. So all of that, thankfully, we had the ingredients, we brought it together, and we've been out of COVID. We are actually 2x of what we were pre-COVID,
Oh,
despite being a
wow.
non-essential commodity, and a non-essential, within a non-essential, also least important commodity that we were in. So it's thankfully, a great journey for us.
So what really excited me when I was listening to all these interviews of you online was, the fact that you spoke about Q lots. There was so much thought that went into it, right? Because you were experiencing it. Because you don't want to have something that you have to dry clean. You want something cotton. You want something wrinkle free. How wonderful! I mean, and I can't even imagine how excited you must be feeling to see this all come to fruition.
It was a lot of excitement, and I think, having said that, there's a little bit of a worry that you don't know whether it'll work or not. You'll put all your energy behind it, but
Yeah.
it was intuitively right because we never had time to speak to the customers. We never had time to, typically when we launch a product, we would experiment it with a bunch of customers and then take a call whether we launch it full scale, etc. We didn't have any of that time. We had less than 15 days to come up with a new collection which would work from home, and therefore we lent into our own experiences to do that. And I think thankfully it worked. That is because we really understand the customer well and we understand women well on what they need.
So you were very clear to explain to me yesterday that Nina, it's not there's no pivot in the plan, so to speak.
Yes.
It was product reorientation. So beyond the product portfolio reorientation, how does this new normal affect your business plan? Because this was a curveball,
Yes.
essentially. So how did
Yes.
it affect your business plan?
So we had raised funds and we were in a complete zone for scale up
Mhm.
over last year, pretty much from hiring to setting up the systems and also, investing ahead of time. So it affected our business plan in two or three ways. Some negative and some positive. We were clearly, of course, hit by about 6 to 8 months in terms of the growth that we would have achieved typically for the year. So, we are behind. We would have wanted a lot more. I mean, of course, we navigated COVID, but this is what aspiration was a lot higher. So it did affect and it hit us about by 6 to 8 months on that runway. The second thing is that we did have plans to enter into offline in a big way. As of now, we have curtailed it to one store, and we are in the process of making that store profitable and learning from that before we go all out because
Where
retail,
is the store?
it's in Delhi, DLF Promenade.
Oh, okay. Okay, lovely.
Yes. And no, it's now doing really well, but we are in the process of learning from this store. And then as retail starts picking up, is when we will go a little bit full out around this. So, it did hit the business a little bit back by this. The What it also impacted us was also personally and as individuals of the team, right? We had to literally work 10x to be where we are because COVID made the entire supply chain, the workforce, the rules, the norms, everything really harder. So we really had to invest in the same and even more amount of energy to even get the same outcome that we would have wanted. So that was a strong impact. So it was not a business plan impact, but that was a strong impact. But I think it taught us agility. It taught us how strong we are as a team, and my entire team, and kudos to all of them. So it just taught us a lot of this, and it has just brought us a lot more closer to each other and wellness. So that's been a very positive advantage of these times for us.
Okay, so like my bent of mind is all about mental health and
Yes.
resilience and agility. So when I read one of your interviews where you said agility, I said I'm going to catch her on this. I want to learn that you talk about agility. So what keeps you going in tough times?
That's a difficult question. Um, no, it
So
is. I mean, you're making everyone introspect. No, I'm just thinking out loud here, right? I mean, I am really a driven person. I don't give up easily. I think I have been a little bit of an achiever oriented mindset forever. So it is very hard to put me off if I put my mind to it. So I think that's what drives me all around. Like I tell myself that now I'm tired, now I'm exhausted, but end of the day, I end up doing it. So I think that's a very strong internal drive that exists in me. But now I also derive a lot of my energy from the team. Everyone around me is so infectious that even if I say hold back, they're like, we will not hold back. And that just keeps pushing. And you need that one person to
Absolutely.
drive, and then the entire infectiousness of the energy comes in. So someone or the other around me is always there to make that push, even if it is not me. Otherwise, it is me which brings in the push that is needed.
How wonderful. So you kind of support each other constantly.
We do very much.
I want to know one thing. So coming from a background like McKinsey, so did that also empower you with certain leadership qualities like this?
Absolutely. I think I actually give a lot of credit to McKinsey from where we've come from, right? End of the day, I think two, three things I learned. A, it's a leadership factory. So it tells you to care about people.
Um,
So, and I am literally trained to think about people first before I think about business. And that has enabled our, our team to be so strongly bonded because they know that I genuinely care. And that's how the culture of the team has come up. We genuinely care for each other. So we are there to therefore back up for each other. We ensure that our personal goals and our company goals are aligned. If they are not aligned, how do we make that happen? So, I mean, I've learned that element of caring about people and what being a true leader is a lot from McKinsey. And I have friends and mentors who I can still reach out to forever. And that's the kind of culture we want to build over here at Fable Street as well.
so I'm going to come back to culture in a minute after I pick your brain once more. I
Sure.
want to, honestly, because we all know that everybody went through a very tough time mentally. I mean, mental health has never been spoken of so much as today,
As
right?
recently, yes.
In the last 1 year, I mean, good Lord, when I talk about mental health or whatever, people be like, Ninna, this is like, a professional suicide. Don't talk about your thoughts or your experiences. And even the vertical when I was working at Business World to set up the platform. Um, so did your mental health suffer and how did you cope with it? What did it look like was there a tsunami that happened? Did you quell it really quickly? What happened with you?
Um, I think so. I went through a difficult time for the first few weeks once the lockdown started, and I don't know whether it was mental health, but it was extremely stressful. End of the day, I was sitting here being responsible for about 150 odd individuals, and you don't know when your business is going to open up. So it's
Mhm.
not been an easy journey, and it was really, really stressful. So it did suffer, I would say, in some shape or form or other. What helped me come out of it or be stronger about it, and it was a period of about 30-40 days, which was really hard. But what helped was, I think, number one, we have a very strong startup community, and end of the day, it's an internalization that we needed, that everyone's going through it. It's not your business, Ayushi, which is ready to suffer, right? Everyone, the country, the world is suffering. So who are you? You are a small speck. So understand that you are not in it alone is something that helped. And the second thing that helped is actually coming back with people together. um I mean, we are talking on Zoom, and I know people feel that work from home and Zoom is the new normal, but the energy and the drive that comes back by just meeting people and talking to them in person and just being able to hug them is not funny. At least that's what we've realized. We've pretty much ended up opening up entire office without me reopening work from home. The whole office comes to office. Like, that's how we work. It's sure because, and it's because of the energy and the stress that gets eliminated by just being around with people. And a lot of us, like a lot of my team actually is non-Delhi, so therefore they were sitting at home isolated and alone. So it's not actually even me who went through a difficult mental time. I was still with family. It was my team, and that just completely changed the entire game once we reopened the offices a bit.
Mhm. Yeah, so we were talking about culture, right? So again, I heard you mention the fact that you feel that you're a master of all and you know all the functions within your business, right?
Yes.
And part of that, you feel strives and succeeds because you have the gift of EQ. That's something you pride on, and I think that's wonderful if you have it and you know it. But
Yes.
did you hone it? Because people get into the startup line of work, right? And they don't have EQ. So is that something that you can hone? Were you born with it? And how can I nurture it if I don't have it to begin with?
So I think so. I am very self aware. And that's why I know that I have a very strong EQ and understanding of people. And I have fought it enough number of times in engagement with people, right? So
Mhm,
you can certainly hone it. The first thing is to be very self aware about it. I am aware that this is the strength that I have.
mhm,
And then you can certainly hone, and you still have to nurture, right? Because the communication of what you still want to be concerned, right? It's about caring. And I'll give you another example, right? So I know I have a strong EQ. I understand what that other person is going through, but the other person doesn't know how to communicate it to you. So the way I ended up owning is that, I sit them down and I have a conversation that this is between us and one time, and this conversation will make you uncomfortable, but it will never happen again. But then
yeah,
you talk your heart out and
mhm,
explain where you're coming from. And I've had a lot of people open up to me to just share. And like men having an emotional conversation is probably the hardest, but I've had men in my team having emotional conversation at personal as well as professional level and what they're going through. So there is a clear opportunity to hone it,
mhm.
and you just need to be aware. You need to also start learning to have open conversations about it. Until you do
Especially,
so,
right? To have an open door policy of sorts, right?
yes, you have. And you have to make the other person comfortable. Because end of the day, EQ is not at the same level, or my emotional understanding and the other person emotional understanding is not at the same level. So I also have to put myself in the other person's shoes and understand what the person is going through. And that's how I have to tailor my communication. So, and that's the process of honing, right? I've seen sometimes I've gone right and sometimes I've gone wrong, even if it's been the well-meaning intent. So you hone it along the way is how I would say.
So I must share with you that I did this wonderful program called Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. It's silly and it was born at Google. And I'll
Oh
share
wow.
the details with you. So I did the course. I was very lucky. The CEO, Richard Fernandez, had come from New York and they invited me to attend it. Oh my goodness, the way they teach you about EQ. I mean, it's fabulous. Absolutely
I would
fabulous.
love to attend. Can you please connect me if they
I
really make that
Richard,
offer?
absolutely fabulous. I mean, that's a whole different conversation, but it's wonderful that you already have the awareness and you talk about EQ because as a startup, the volatility of the setup alone, I can imagine, is wired enough. Okay, I'm going to ask you a really tricky question again.
Okay.
So, what is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear is that this is all a bubble and this is not reality. And at times, and I mean, I'm very candid about it and like I'm laughing, but yes. See, touch wood. And I mean, thanks to God. And I'm sure we have done a lot of things right, but things are moving in the right stride and moving in our favor. A lot of the credit goes to me, team, and I'm actually proud of it. But end of the day, somewhere there is a fear that, maybe the next thing that you do you're going to fail, and maybe the next thing, so there is a little bit of a fear that this is a bubble you are living in. I don't know how to overcome it, but that's a fear.
So do you have any mindfulness practices? Do you meditate? Do you pray? Do you like go for a run? What keeps you consistent and centered?
I don't follow much of the mindfulness practices, but as I said, right, I'm very self aware. So when
Mhm.
I know when I'm getting stressed, and I'm quite aware of, therefore, what's stressing me out. What helps me is two, three things. If it's really stressful, then I would love to listen to some music and just step out for a quick walk to just get my head cleared. But other thing that I always then tell myself is that, is it worth stressing about? And I tell that to myself 10 times, and hope like 11th, by the time I speak about it to myself 11th time, it's gone. Or at least then I am more in the zone that let's find a resolution to the situation, but it's not worth fretting about.
You know what you are doing, my dear, without even knowing. You are doing
No.
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy of your own. And
Yes,
you're
maybe that's true.
you're
But
doing
yeah,
your own.
I mean, yeah, that's true. See, end of the day, when you're stressed, your heart's sinking, there's something that's impacting you. every time when you're doing something, your mind will get distracted to something else. So you become quite aware that these are the signals which are telling you that something is in your head. So I now know then that that's how I need to clear my head, and then I figure out something that will make me clear my head about it.
How lovely. You're quite sorted, I must say. I want to be like you when I grow up. Um,
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
yeah. So, what are the three things you would tell other aspiring women entrepreneurs?
Um, the first thing I would say is that it doesn't matter whether you're a women entrepreneur or a men entrepreneur, right? You're an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And therefore, don't limit yourself that just because you're a woman, it could be difficult. That's the first thing. And it is really important to internalize this, because we are not going to go and conquer the world while telling ourselves that, we are women entrepreneurs, we have a disadvantage, etc. So I think very important. The second thing is, have a have a plan in mind. It should be clear on what you want to achieve. And people say that it's just passion that has to drive you, but if you don't have a business plan and you want to set up something, it doesn't make sense. You will
Yeah.
not be able to raise money, you will not be able to convince yourself whether it makes sense around this. Have a plan and then take a call whether you want to raise money, you want to do it alone, but it cannot be done without a plan.
Mhm.
And third, I would say is, it's great if your business and passion intersects, but don't only run for passion and assume that it will work out.
Say that,
And
say that again, because shouldn't your, so your passion and your business
so
idea.
you cannot, I mean, your passion and business ideas work, come together, then that's the best. I mean, thankfully, in my case, it kind of did. But you cannot be just purely setting up a business purely basis passion. I don't think it's a fair decision to make, because I mean, end of the day, 1 in 10 businesses succeed, right?
Mhm.
So you have to be conscious about what you are going into, and sometimes businesses will not make sense. So you purely cannot set up only basis passion. It has to have a business lens to it. If it works and if you're clear about the aspirations, that's when you jump into it.
So what I'm hearing you say is your ikigai, essentially, right? What makes you money? What works? Da da da. The intersecting points. Yeah, that's great advice. So what is the best advice that you received, and how has that worked for you?
What's the best advice that I've received? um, I think one of my mentors in early stages, investors actually categorically told me invest in people.
How lovely.
And that, I mean, money will come and everything, but invest in people, because they are the ones who will deliver. And it's really worked well, and it's more importantly worked for me because I'm a single founder, right? So end of the day, I'm very clear that I can't deliver alone. It has to be the team.
Mhm.
And I mean, COVID was actually the time where this entire advice was actually put to test, right? It's been difficult. We were very conscious, and we were equally conscious about mental health and anything about the team members. And we invested, I mean, I personally invested in them, and they are my closest friends at this point in time. But we've just come together and we've been there for each other. And now I'm so confident about the team that whether Fable Street exists or not in longer term, but then this team will go with me wherever I go. And I mean, I think that's the best thing that I heard. And this team is going to make Fable Street big.
How lovely. I find that, sometimes people say in an interview, they'll ask you, so what you think about yourself? And when you say you're a people's person, I don't know how many people realize that it's a really important quality to have. And if you have it and you hone it, I think your whatever you're going to do is going to go places. So we're going to bring some magic. I'm sure you will. You're on your way there already. So we're going to bring some magic into this, right? So what if we had a magic reset button that we could press right now, right? And you had a chance to restart your entrepreneurial journey. What would you do differently?
I would have gotten another co-founder with me.
I was going to ask you about solopreneurship and how that feels. You would have gotten.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just a hard journey. It's just very, very hard journey. Like after this, a job seems like really trivial and simple. It's just a very hard journey, and the mental stresses that you go through. Now, apart from the amount of work you have, you need someone around you. You need someone, and you need that support in decision making. You need that support on you doing it right. We are None of us is confident about every decision that you make, right? You have to make it, and then end of the day, the buck stops at you, and that feeling is very, very difficult around it. And some of this is monetary, some of this is people's careers. A lot of this comes to you, right? COVID, that's when you spoke about this entire mental health and the stress situation, right? The first 20 days of COVID hitting and the lockdown happening, right? The biggest stress was that you're responsible for 150 people. If you have to lay them off, what would happen? What would happen to their lives? And I mean, you can imagine what a person will go through around this. So it's not about it. So, and that's been hard. So if you have someone around it to share with and jointly take it together, so that's what I miss.
So is there a possibility or a chance of you trying to add a co-founder? Is that something that I hear?
Not really. I mean, I think we are at a different stage of business. So we are not, I mean, I don't need to now look for a co founder. And as I said, right now, I have a team where I can share my frustrations and fears also with, right? And that's what something that I've learned. And I also did build an ecosystem around me. I mean, my husband's a little bit similar in terms of my background, and a bunch of other startup founders. So they have all been each other around to discuss, share, etc. So you've kind of built to figure out, if you don't have a co-founder, then how do you run a business?
So you have your support system in terms of your friends and family as well, is what I hear.
Yes, yes.
You're lucky like that then. So I'm just wondering if we have a little bit more time before we start the questions, because I did want to ask you, that you got your Series A funding
Yeah.
right before COVID kind of struck. Um, I'm sure whoever's watching right now, they're either B school students or they're entrepreneurs, and they'd be curious to know, briefly, if you could describe what one would need to do to secure funding. A few
Sure.
pointers that would be helpful.
Um, I think whether it is Series A or any type of funding, it's very clear what the investors are looking for. They look for three or four things clearly. Number one is the industry you are in, or the business you are in, is there a significant opportunity to scale up? Because investors are looking to make at least 10 to 15x of your business when they invest in equity based funding. So sometimes they do look at the industry size itself and not purely just what you are doing. So if there is a significant industry opportunity, that is number one that they look at. Second is that they will look at the founder and or the founders significantly. Your pedigree, your experience, how you have built the business, they are going to look at it really deep, and they will test different shapes and forms for you. They will do background and ref checks. I mean, they go to any extent that they need to, and that's how they will test you, and they will test you in terms of your thinking, etc. So founder is the second reason how and when they will invest, especially in early stages. Third is the team, because team has to deliver. So they would want to see that, are you a team builder, and they can rely on you to have a team which will deliver around it. And then fourth is, of course, the business plan and the vision that you have, and they go really strong on business plan. So these are very cliched answers, but end of the day, I have gone through it, and I've gone through the experience, and I'm sure a lot of you have also gone through it. But that's what they look for. So the answer is actually simple, and these are the four things they look for. You have to hit it right on all the four things to make it work.
So I would wonder then that what if you don't have the pedigree? You're starting out late in life, but you find a co-founder who kind of supplements you in terms of the experience and pedigree. Would that be a
Yeah, no, they will fund. So it's a mix of all four, right? So if it doesn't matter, see, pedigree just gives you a little bit of an early advantage. That does not mean that that's the only advantage. It's just that it's having the pedigree is an informal indicator of that the person is capable. They're looking for that indication. Now that can come in without saying that, let's say you ended up scaling up a business very quickly, or in your job you were a fast achiever, right? Something or the other is what they will look for in some shape and form. And if you have a co-founder, that works, and they will just look at delivery end of the day. Best answer is they will speak to 5 customers and get to know what you're doing as a business. So they don't listen to what you tell them. They
Feed-
also do an outside and check.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a couple of questions. So how did you go about funding before starting your venture?
I invested all my savings.
Oh my
I
God.
don't know why I did it. I'm
Uh,
not sure it is a prudent decision, but I had a very clear. So I did raise an angel round, but before I raised an angel round, I did invest all my savings. See, the way I looked at it was, I believe that people like me, this is not a risk. If I go back to the industry, I can get a job any day. So in my head, therefore, I was really not taking a risk by jumping into entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And that's how I think about it. So therefore, the money I had, I will end up earning it unless I needed to use the money somewhere else, right? I did invest my savings, and we did not have any liabilities back then. So that's how I started funding my business. I must also say that, when I went to raise my angel round, it was back in 2015, late 2015, early 2016. It was it was one of the downturn times, and apparel is one of the hardest businesses. But what gave investors the conviction was that A, I spent my own money to
Mhm.
build the product,
Yeah.
and B, the product worked. So that's what gave the conviction to the investors to invest. And I raised in one of the toughest times. Both the times, actually, I raised in one of the toughest times to raise, right? And things are technically not in my favor, like single woman, I mean, woman founder, single founder, raising in the toughest times, apparel industry, there have been no successes. So it's a funny anecdote, but I mean, I say that quite often, but end of the day, that's how it happened. So some of those things we would have done right, which gave the investors the confidence that she means business.
Okay, so we have a bunch of questions. I think you've answered quite a few. So did you ever feel the need of having a co-founder? You already mentioned that you have felt it. Maybe someone who had experience in the industry. Is that what you were looking for? Somebody with experience in the industry? Was
Not
criteria?
really. Not really. I think you actually need someone at the same bandwidth as a co-founder. You don't need someone. So it's great if you have complementary skill sets, but the first prerogative for a co-founder has to be on the same equation in terms of vision, expectation, and approach to decision making. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge.
Okay. Is your family supportive? Yes, 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 they are.
Yes.
What were the initial hurdles?
I kind of picked it up, the challenges
Yes, you
around this.
did. And this is a very interesting question, that how did you build your support system?
How did I build my support system? I think I was, as I said, right, I was aware that it's going to be a challenging journey, and I did build my support system along the way. Of course, to start with, I did need my family by my side to mentally be there, right? I'm taking the plunge because I didn't want enough criticism. Ki, "Yaar, why are you doing it?" And it was, by the way, at times funny, right? Because in my early days, not my parents, but a bunch of direct relatives or people around you, they would think it MBA करके सब कुछ करके ऐसे MNC में जॉब करके तुम बुटीक खोलने वाली हो. So that kind of thing that brings you down around this. But I mean, in my head, I always feel that ignore it. People will be thinking a little bit around it. But yeah, so first thing was that. But I think over time you realize that where do you need the most. And I mean, me and my husband, we come from a similar pedigree, so he did operate as a co-founder mentally for a significant amount of time with me while being in a job. And then we have a bunch of friends who are startup entrepreneurs, and just, I mean, we all realized that we need an ecosystem, and we then became like, we right now have a WhatsApp group we chat with, and we trust each other, we share our worries with
Absolutely.
each other, and we solve it along the way. So I mean, you'll just come across it as long as you're aware that you need that system for you.
Yeah, I think that's so wonderful. And I think the trust factor, really, and the fact that you have a sounding board, a group
Yes.
which is like a sounding board for you. What are the marketing channels that you have tapped into to reach new customers?
So we've basically been online primarily. So the core marketing channels have been the traditional channels for us: the Facebook, the Instagram, the Google AdWords, etc., to target the consumers. What we've also seen is we've had a significant organic, press, which has enabled us to reach out to a lot more consumers. So those are the core marketing actions we've taken. And last is something that we don't actively focus on, but because of the brand being strong, there's a lot of word of mouth. And now that's a channel that we want to properly tap into to see how do we really exaggerate this entire word of mouth and people talking to each other about us.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday, and my entire Instagram is full of Fable Street.
That's social listening of Facebook, unless you went to Fable Street, That's Facebook listening to what you do.
Sometimes it's so creepy. You're just like, oh my goodness, there's nothing you can say without like, oh, chatting about somebody knowing what you're doing. Um,
Yes.
so, how does your production process really work? Is it completely in-house? How did you build it from scratch without really hailing from the industry? How much percentage of your sales come from customized clothes versus standard sizes?
Okay. So for us, about 20% come from customized sizes and rest come from standard sizes. This is because we are also very strong on standard sizes, and we have kind of set up a very smart algorithm in place that the more customers we serve, the more data we collect. And the more data we collect, the better we become at sizing. So, it's a self improving algorithm that we've kind of set up. So therefore, we have a significant chunk of business coming from standard sizes. To come back to the question on our manufacturing and how did we set it up, so we do it primarily in house. About 70% happens in house, and rest of the manufacturing happens as outsourced. Back in 2016, when I set it up, I just learned along the way. I mean, of course, I did hire someone who understood the technicalities, but we had a small two-room manufacturing unit which had two machines and a master to set it up. And now we are sitting with 100 plus of capacity. Yeah, but I set it up. So I know the names of the companies, the machines, the needles, and everything that you need to buy to set up a manufacturing unit.
Have you learned how to stitch yet?
No, that's the only thing I haven't done so.
The challenge
But
has been thrown at you. The challenge has been
yes,
thrown.
I'm very close to it. I mean, of course, you learned it as those social SUPW that we used to have it in school, right? But yeah, I mean, I've just not put my hand on a machine. But beyond that, I've done everything.
Lovely, lovely. That's so great. And how much percentage of your sales come from customized clothes versus standard sizes?
I just mentioned about 20% from customized and remaining 80% from standard.
Ah, okay. Last question. To what do you attribute your success?
We are not successful yet. That's not the right way to put this. Um, no, I mean, I think it's very hard to attribute this to something. I think, honestly, it is going to be hard work, smart thinking, and then executing it well. It cannot be to one thing. And it's just not purely being in the right place at the right time. We've actually been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
And it's worked for you because you're buoyant. So as far as I'm concerned, you're like you're sailing, you're swimming, and you're buoyant.
Thankfully, yes. And I hope it looks like this forever.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us today in this conversation, and to everybody who's hearing. And we look forward for you all to join us on our next session, which will be shared in the next couple of days. So thank you so much, and wonderful chatting with you, Aishi. So much to exchange for us too offline.
Yes, we should catch up offline. And thank you so much for having me on this platform, Nina. And I'd love to hear more. I mean, I'm always available, and my email is ayushi@FableStreet.com. So anyone who wants to reach out would be happy to catch up.
Yes, please do reach out to Ayushi and pick her brain. Thank
Sounds good. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.